Hello, everyone. I'm Marie. I'm from the Cuban policy team, and I'm responsible for the marine biodiversity topics that will be discussed at COP16. So, when we are talking about marine biodiversity, we are talking about a lot of things. And in particular, the ocean. So the ocean is about takes 71% of Earth's surface, and the Pacific Ocean by itself is about a third of the planet. So we're talking about huge areas. One key point for marine ecosystem is that they are globally connected. So there are large currents that are going throughout the ocean and that are linking all these ecosystems together. So it is really key to have international collaboration and cooperation for managing, for sustainable use, and for conservation of these ecosystems. They are all directly linked to each other. We still know very little about the ocean. It's about 80% of the ocean that has not been mapped. We often say that we know more the moon than the deep ocean. And there are a lot of species that are still not being discovered. So why is it so important? So the ocean supply half of the planet's oxygens. It's really key in the global water system. There are lots of species and ecosystems, very important for climate regulations. Regarding climate change, it absorbs a lot of CO2 that has a lot of consequences on the ocean. And also it provides a lot of protections against erosion, extreme weather events, clean water, livelihood products. So there are more than 3 billion people that directly rely on marine and coastal biodiversity for their livelihoods. And a lot of people are actually living very close to the coast. So most people have connections with the oceans, and the ocean is important for them all. It largely contributes also to food security in many places. And it's very important not to forget all the strong cultural and identity connection that people have with the ocean throughout the world. This is something that can be found everywhere on the planet. So when we're looking at the main threats, you're probably maybe familiar with this graph. We're often talking about the terrestrial ones, but for the marine ones, the main threat is direct exploitation, largely from industrial fishing and other threats like not well-managed aquaculture, for example. But also there are other common threats that we know for biodiversity, such as land sea use change, climate change pollutions, invasive species. So ocean governance is complicated. So we are here at the CBD, and it relates to the conservation of biodiversity, right? But there are also a lot of UN agreements that are related, for example, for shipping or for trade, for fisheries. I'm highlighting here the newest one, which is the BBNJ, Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction Treaty, that was finalized last year in the UN. And this treaty in particular is also about conservation and sustainable use of marine biodiversity, but in international waters. So it's like a treaty that has to be considered together with the CBD. Just explaining a little bit more on that, countries have their territorial sea and then their exclusive economic zones. So they have sovereign rights over their waters until 200 nautical miles. There are a few exceptions, but that's the basic rule. Beyond that, it's the high seas, so international waters. Within the high sea, the BBNJ treaty is the one that is important. Before that, the CBD has a role to play. So if we look at that on a map, we can see basically that what countries commit to do within the CBD is applying within this whitish area, which are the exclusive economic zones. It does not apply to the high seas. This is within the BBNJ, but it can inform. So for the negotiations on marine and coastal biodiversity and island biodiversity, there are two sub-items during the negotiations. The first one is about the conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity and island biodiversity. These are the documents from COP15, and from the last SEPSTA. And the second topic is about ecologically or biologically significant marine areas. So there are two sub-items. So to start with the first one, so conservation and sustainable use of marine and coastal biodiversity, what was decided at COP15 is that, well, in the COP15 recommendation, it recognized the importance of the ocean as a of marine and coastal biodiversity as a key cross-cutting element of the KM Global Biodiversity Framework. And it recognized the need to strengthen cooperation and collaboration with different treaties, such as the PPNJ treaties in areas beyond national jurisdictions. It reinforces the importance of the ecosystem approach and the precautionary approach, and to use the best available science and traditional knowledge with the free, prior, and informed consent of indigenous people and local communities to support the conservation and sustainable use of the ocean. Also in these decisions, the decision encourages parties to use documents that have been produced in previous COPs about different topics, such as underwater noise, impacts of marine debris, and all these documents that have been produced, they have been basically encouraging people to use them, which would be useful. They also recognize the importance to consider the GBF in the BBH negotiation, because at the time wasn't finished, and also in the negotiation under deep seabed mining, which are within the International Seabed Authority, which is another UN body for the exploitation of the deep sea. So this is something different, but that's also why ocean governance is quite fragmented. But it's important to understand that the CBD cannot decide on deep sea bed mining. It is not within its authority. So this COP decision also invites governments to make use of the science that have been produced, to acknowledge the importance of marine biodiversity in overall the implementation of the GPS, and to respecting the rights of IPLCs in this regard, as well as access to marine genetic resources. They also mention economic valuation of ecosystem services, and to develop an ambitious legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, which is again within another UN fora, and which is another treaty that is currently negotiated. So after COP, the COP decision requested that there would be two review of program of works. So program of works are a way of implementing the work of the CBD, of the convention, even before the GBF. So they existed even before the GBF, and they tasked some groups to review if the program of work that existed before on this topic of marine and coastal biodiversity still were fitted the GBF, and if not, what were the gaps between the program of works and the GBF. So they also requested another documents that I won't mention too much more. What is specifically relevant to use on this marine issue, in marine topics, is that there is several times the mention of the Sustainable Ocean Initiative, which is a capacity building platform that is provided by the CBD Secretariat with other partners, and that allows capacity building for different stakeholders. So this is very important for youth, that youth can participate in the activities within the Sustainable Ocean Initiative. And there were also mention of youth regarding cooperation and synergies for the implementation of the 2030 agenda. So basically what came out of the SEPSTA recommendation, so the document that will be taken over and the negotiation will continue at COP, is that most of the text is clean, so without brackets, but all the annex, which has the review of this gap that they identify with different expert workshops, are bracketed because all of them are in the annex. So it's very important that the negotiation continue on the annex. So some given text was added before even the last SEPSTA negotiation through a workshop, and then it was reflected within the SEPSTA recommendation, which is the inclusion of use in the work of the Sustainable Ocean Initiative. There were also additional text that has been added, but is currently bracketed because it's in the annex. So we are quite happy with that. And what we want to look out for at COP is that we want to make sure that IPSCs, women and youth, can participate in these capacity building activities. So making sure that this stays in the text and that they can participate in different workshops that are mentioned, as well as monitoring how the negotiations on the annex are going. For the second sub-item, which is ecologically or biologically significant marine areas, I'll give you a little bit more of context. So we call them EPSAs. So they represent area of the ocean that are special importance in terms of ecological or biological characteristics. There are 333 EPSAs that have been identified, and they cover about 20% of the ocean. So this, you can see them here. So EPSAs, so these areas of importance, are identified according to different criteria. They can be unique or very rare places. They have spatial importance for some life histories, for some species that are threatened, endangered. They can be particularly sensitive or slow to recover. But they can also just be very important because there is a lot of biological productivity. So there are different criteria that can be used to define EPSAs, and this EPSA process exists for a while now. So it exists since 2008. It's they call it a scientific technical exercise because it's really like experts coming together, looking at what are these places, how can we identify them using these criteria, and they delineate important ocean area, but they are not managed or nor protected. So they are not marine protected areas and there are not other effective conservation measures. They are important places and there is no insurance that none of these that these places would be protected. This is not the aim of the EPSAs. But they can be used by parties if they want to. So the COP15 decision on EPSAs reaffirmed the importance of different UN bodies in the EPSA, in the importance of the EPSA that should be considered by these bodies, that the EPSA should be considered by these bodies, sorry. And that the EPSAs can contribute to the implementation of GBF because they are important places that can be protected. So they ask for expert workshop to identify options for modifying the description of EPSAs or describe new EPSAs. So basically, they wanted to have documents that could help review how EPSAs are identified, whether being modified or adding new EPSAs. This is the big question. They also, this COP decision also invited parties to use the EPSA experience within the BBNJ negotiation, and it's very relevant because EPSAs are not only in exclusive economic zones, they are also in international waters. And they also recommended to consider EPSAs within the deep seabed mining negotiation under the International Seabed Authority. So they also encourage parties, to use EPSAs to inform conservation within their sovereign rights. So what happened after COP? is that there were these two expert workshops, one on the technical aspects on how to modify EFSAs, and one on the legal aspects. So these documents were provided to SEPSTA, so they were discussed at SEPSTA. And basically, they are in the annex of the current document that is going to be negotiated by the COPs. So basically, it's all about how to modify and create new EFSAs. It's been in negotiation for a long time. The main text is partially clean. There are still some political decisions. I'll mention them a little bit after. But all this annex, which has all the conditions, is bracketed. So it requires more negotiations on it. The main political problems are the way other states can comment on a party's proposal to modify an EFSA and whether or not an EFSA can be removed once it has been identified. This is going into like very political decision, and it's more technical negotiations. So what we want to look out for at COP is to make sure that right holders, including IPLC Women and Youth, can participate in relevant workshops if they are, and ensure that traditional knowledge is only used with the free, prior, and informed consent of Indigenous people and local communities within the EFSA workshops. We will also monitor the negotiations on the annex, but it's much less of a youth priority, as it's really quite technical. Here we go. So I hope this helped you understand a little bit more of the marine topics that will be discussed at COP. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can reach out to me in Telegram. And thanks very much.